25,000 candidates standing for 8,000 seats in 5,000 wards. That's this year's local elections in a nutshell. They make up what will be Rishi Sunak's first test with voters as Prime Minister. The first, and probably the last, before the next general election. Today, Labour leads the Conservatives in the polls by 15 percentage points. But these local elections will be our first glimpse as to whether those poll leads for Labour are actually borne out at the ballot box. We spoke to candidates from various parties to find out what's really going on the ground. We started our journey in Birkenhead on the Wirral. Labour's ahead in the polls nationally by 16, 17, 18 points, but here on the Wirral, they do seem in some bits to be on the back foot. In Birkenhead, in Prenton, in Bromborough, it seems to be the Greens that are challenging Labour here, and it seems to be, if you look based on the posters, it seems to be Labour that's on the back foot. We had a little conversation with some Green activists and candidates to find out exactly how they're doing. First, I just want to start with you, really, is that you used to be a Labour councillor, and you joined the Greens after being expelled by the party. How different is it being a Green candidate?
One of the big differences between Labour and the Green Party is Green councillors work really hard all year round. Loads of casework, loads of knocking on doors, loads of leaflets reflecting and campaigning on the issues that are relevant to residents in this area. Labour can take things for granted and just turn up at election time, and that's not working around here this time.
10 years ago, your ward, and really your ward as well, have been Labour for about 10 years, for God knows how long. It used to be Lib Dem at one point, but
yes.
these are pretty much safe Labour wards. What are you doing? How are you winning this?
The focus on local issues, being visible, sorting issues out, we knock on doors, and we just keep in touch all year round. We try to be active, and we've also got the bonus, we're not whipped in any way, so we're free to say what we like on the council.
How much of your week, how much of your past year or a bit has door knocking, campaigning been a part of it?
Most of the week.
Most of the week.
I work 4 days a week, and so all my days off, and sometimes evenings. So I enjoy it a little bit.
Where is your support coming from? It can't just be Labour voters.
It's across the board.
Yeah.
Again, Conservative and traditional Lib Dem voters, excuse me, are liking what we do.
Yeah.
Labour tweet things like we're stealing their votes, we're stealing their wards, but no, actually we're doing the work of democratic candidates and councillors, and people, the electorate, are making up their own minds about how they're going to cast their votes.
Yeah. What are you doing that you think the media's missing?
Well, I don't think we're covered as much, say, with UKIP, which obviously they never won a seat at Parliament, but they had a great success at the European elections and ultimately led to Brexit. There was a great focus on them in news as possibly beating the Tories, and it's one of those things, the more you mention it, the more likely it is to happen. But there hasn't been that same curiosity with the Greens, and we just sort of get sidelined a lot, even though we're doing much better in terms of councillors than UKIP ever did. And in polls we're probably ahead of Reform as well.
Yeah, you are more councillors than UKIP ever did. I speak to Conservative voters and they often say, I'm going to vote Green. But they're not voting Green because you're the left alternative to Labour, they're voting Green for other reasons.
This is it, you do get a lot of people, to be fair, who say, oh yeah, I support you locally, think you're fantastic, but...
Would they do you nationally?
No, not nationally.
People want to change, so a lot of people are voting Green in the local elections and are considering voting Green in the general election too.
The Green Party's own appeal with voters is broad. When it comes to favourability, the Green brand is the second most popular with voters after Labour, but it's the least unfavourable of them all. But I get the impression it's only limited to council elections, and these are council elections. The Green appeal seems less to be about national policy and more about all things local. And if that is the case, can they really take it all the way to Westminster? Now, Birkenhead will be no battleground seat at the next general election, but Stoke-on-Trent is. We headed over there to meet with Labour in a marginal ward. In the 2015 council elections, the city held firm, despite UKIP gains and a challenge from local independents. But in 2019, things fell apart.
Here we are in what is so-called Brexit Britain, the city with the largest Leave vote. 10 years ago, 3 of the constituencies here voted for Labour MPs. Now, they're all represented by Conservative MPs. If Labour wants to recover, if Labour wants to get back into government, it needs to show progress in Stoke-on-Trent. Let's see if that's happening. What are the issues on the doorstep?
Misuse of council money. I think a lot of people would say the car park in Hanley that they've just spent 15 million on. and apparently there's a plan to build another one, which is just crazy. It's just absolute madness when they're saying that there isn't enough money to get, the council repairs done, the roads done, all these other things.
See, this voted Labour in 2019.
They did.
But the incumbent council defected to the Conservatives.
Yes, which has actually done us a lot of
Why did
favours.
she do it?
People are very unhappy.
Do you get any abuse on the doorstep?
Not really, no. I mean, I've had a couple of people a little bit rude, but that comes with the territory, doesn't it? I try not to engage with that, really.
Ooh, what kind of rudeness are we talking?
Well, just nothing specific, just an attitude, I suppose, really. And you do get some of the chat about, you need to do something about all the immigrants. You get a little bit of that. But I think sometimes it's just engaging with these people and just having trying to have an adult conversation with them, and putting a different perspective rather than what's fed through the press, really.
Yeah. Do you feel like culture war comes through at all?
In terms of?
Gender, or does it feed people's votes, or is it just noise?
I think it's just noise, a lot of it. I think the thing is, because I'm not very good with Facebook, I'll be honest, I don't really like Facebook.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, I kind of, Facebook and arguments seem to go in the same sentence very often. Yeah. So I've been more of a kind of go and talk to people on the doorstep kind of candidate, I suppose, really. And I think that cuts through.
Do you think you can make a difference as a councillor?
I'd like to think so. If I didn't think I could, then I wouldn't have stood.
Yeah, it's just council budgets cut to the bone, and you don't really have much money to play with.
Yeah, and I've been quite honest with people when I've been when I've been talking to them, saying, we are going to have an honest conversation, if we do get into power, about the state of the budget, because I suspect it's going to be very, very slim. So it's going to be about using what resources there are very cleverly and quite creatively.
Look, this is the city, Brexit central capital, I suppose. Like, does it feel like that? Do you feel like you get any resentment or opposition?
I think people have realised now that they were lied to, they were missold the Brexit policy, and they have realised that they've made a mistake. That is the biggest reason that people are coming back to us, because they've been let down by Tories, and they are saying that themselves. Which is a great comfort to us as candidates.
So does
for the Labour
Brexit come
Party.
up on the doorstep?
Oh yes, it definitely has come up on the doorstep many times with myself and with my colleagues, that people feel that we are struggling in this living crisis and fuel poverty and energy crisis is due to the Brexit that had gone out on a missold, misinformed information that we were told about the NHS, or we'd be saving money. And NHS is going downhill by the day.
Yeah.
The crisis.
So do you see Leave voters changing their mind, or what? What are you getting?
I would say they are changing their mind because they feel let down by the Tories. They can't trust them anymore. So they've decided to come back to Labour. Don't forget, Stoke-on-Trent was a Labour heartland for many, many years, for decades.
Right now, the Conservatives are in charge of the council. I made 5 separate phone calls to try and speak to those Tory councillors, and only one of them answered, was ill, and the rest wouldn't even pick up. But where we were able to speak to one Conservative was in the neighbouring Crewe and Nantwich constituency.
Now, there are local elections here in the Cheshire East Council, and though Crewe Central, the inner parts of Crewe, do vote Labour, it's the marginals, it's the outer suburbs and villages around Crewe and Nantwich that don't. We spoke to a Conservative councillor in the Williston ward, which voted Conservative by a 10-point margin, which, to be honest, makes it a battleground seat, to see how he's getting on, whether he will hold on to his seat on May the 4th. So I'm currently with Councillor Alan Gage, who's representing a ward in Cheshire East. Bit of a battleground ward, isn't it?
You may think that the national picture, the national discussion would be something that would dominate on the doorsteps. I can tell you, I could count on one hand the amount of residents that I've spoken to that have wanted to engage on a national level. It's all local. And that's what matters to people here in Williston. What we're going to do about the local bus service, which is under pressure. There's roads that drastic need of local attention, and it's the issues that people are really judging it on.
Nevertheless, it is a marginal ward at times, isn't it? Does it feel like it?
But you don't know what's going to happen until the result's called.
Exactly that.
And for that reason, I like to spend as much time as possible speaking face to face with my residents. That's what I did in 2019. They chose myself.
Yeah.
And in 2023, I'll be doing the same, and they will choose the person that they want to represent them.
Do you have a large enough team of people to cover the ward?
We've got good volunteers in the area, but from a personal point of view, I like to spend as much time personally speaking to my residents, because it's myself that they're being asked to vote for. But it's not just at election times as well. For instance, on this road, we're on Williston Road at the moment. Last summer, I did a resident survey. I spoke to every resident that was home with my team, and we picked up the local issues. We don't just do it at election times.
What you're right about the polls, they are narrowing slightly, so it was like 25-point Labour lead in December.
What I will say about the national picture is, personally, I'm actually quite encouraged. The direction of travel, if you look at the polls, the increase, the Conservatives have got a slow and steady increase, and I hope that continues. And I think over time people are slowly coming to the understanding that Rishi is someone who does deliver, and I think that's starting to break through. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Now, Williston Rope has voted in a Conservative councillor twice over the last 10 years. At the last election, it went 44% Conservative, 33% Labour. If the national swing is to be believed, this seat should be turning red. But will it? The English local election was on the 4th of May. It represents the public's first referendum on Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. Apathy appears to be the dominant theme of this election. During our drive down, through the Wirral, into Stoke, and back up to Crewe, I noticed few, if any, election posters. The parties don't appear to be exciting that many people. But in local elections, when, on average, just 3 in 4 of us vote, should that be any surprise?